Here we have Ed's nicely road-worn Strat neck, and somebody's much loved one at the look of it, by the look of it, and it's in for a refret. So the wire hasn't arrived yet. That should be here tomorrow. Somebody using a jet wash outside. So what I'm looking to do is to pull the frets tonight. So it's got a sanded back to wood and darkened look about it, which people very much like. Lots of dings and bangs and whatnot. So there's a few bits I'm going to just take off for this time being, like this here thing, if I can find where I've gone and put the screwdriver. Thank you. So we take off the tusk string trees for a minute. So what's going to happen with this one is it's going to be a straight refret with a bit of a radiusing of the board to go along with it, just to clean it up, give it a new look. So we've got, I don't know if you can see here, what we've got, filled ends. So we're going to go for that again, a filled ends look. We could take the frets out and leave those intact. The problem with doing that is, well, what's the problem? Problem with doing that is that you can't really clean out the frets, so the slots so well. So I think it's a good idea to remove the end fills, or cut through the end fills in order to, what's the word I'm looking for? Clean out the slots. So that's really important that we get clean slots so that we can get the new frets in. I don't know how well you can see this. There's a flicker of the lights as people put on the that thing, jet wash. So I'm going to tap these out, tap this nut out. So with a neck only refret, just going to see what we can get it to move at all. Yeah, with the neck only refret, there's a sort of limit to the precision of what's the word I'm looking for? Fret leveling I can do afterwards. Now it sounds like a bad thing. It's not. What I have learned over the years is that my my leveling method, normally done with the whole guitar on location, is usually a little bit more accurate than doing it with the neck only. So I'm sort of getting a bit of movement in there, but not an awful lot. I don't have a, normally this is attached to a guitar which doesn't move as much, but here it's, I'm going to have to do it like so. It's actually stuck somewhere in here, so I don't really want it to break or pull out anything else, so I'm going to have to just be very careful with it. You have to sort of a maximum amount of pullingness, because it's actually quite easy to break either the wood or the the wood here or the nut itself. So it doesn't really want to just tap out the way sometimes they do. I'm going to try it again from this end. Now it's rounded on this end as well. It's very difficult to keep it still at the moment. Okay, we've got a little bit of movement there. See if I can keep tapping it sideways. Jolly good. It's trying to break. It's so well tightly fitted. So I think I better just keep on with the sideways drift. So we don't end up with any mistakes. Right, so I need that out because I've got to obviously clean up the whole of the fingerboard. So we'll put that to one side. So the idea, normally I typically refret, and then once I've refretted, with the neck back on the guitar, then I can precision level the frets for exactly that guitar when strung up, because my method of fret leveling is done with the strings on and the neck fully loaded. And the reason I do that is because you can get a set of level frets like this, but where's that ruler that I never use? There. Yeah, you can get a set of level frets, but that's only with the neck, what's the word, unloaded. So as soon as we compress it with string loading, the frets, even if they're level before, they bunch a little bit and do something unusual. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to put the neck into a bit of back bow. So I'm going to get the right size X key first of all, which is one of those. So the idea is, if I do a neck refret with the neck on its own, I don't have the body available to me to do that under pressure or under tension, under compression leveling. So I'm basically having to do it flat, which is pretty good. It's a lot better than not doing it at all. It's just a little bit less perfect than doing it my preferred way. But there are times when it's difficult or impossible for people to send the guitar through the post, and I understand that. So it's not a good thing for them to do. So occasionally I do a neck only. Now I will of course refret and then precision level the neck to the best of my abilities with, of course, a radius block or my normal method, but without any compression, because short of building a jig for it, which I haven't got around to doing, I kind of had some thoughts about it, but it turned out to be quite a complicated jig that would be required. Short of having a specialist jig for it, I can't really put the neck under playing style compression to simulate. It's not the same as bending it. There are lots of jigs where you can bend the neck on a curve, but that's not what I'm really interested in. I'm interested in the overall compression from end to end. That's what makes the neck behave in its interesting fashion. So what I'm getting it ready is I've already put the neck into a bit of back bow, which is, in other words, I've created some backwards hump. And the idea is I'm trying to release the grip on the tangs. I'm going to heat up a soldering iron so that I might want to just turn that off and put the different tip on. I'm going to heat up a soldering iron, and then I'm going to wet the fretboard as well, dampen it I should say, so that I can get a little bit of water in and a bit of steam going on. And the idea about that is so that we can heat up the frets. It may heat up any glue that's in there, or just heat up the grease that's built up over the years. And so once I've done that, I will remove the frets by pulling them up. So I'm going to heat up the slightly thicker iron, or bigger tipped iron. So that's that part. I'm going to get my cloth wetted up. Bear with me. So back bow, moisture, back bow, moisture, and fret removal pliers, things. Sorry, I'm not making a lot of sense. So we've got back bow, we've got moisture, we've got heat, and we've got I'll go left-handed to right-handed around this way, so you can probably see the wire snaking about. So the idea is, to begin with, is I can put a little bit of warmth on the fret here, and it usually will, when it's hot enough, it'll cause some of the grease to bubble. My aim for the beginning is you won't be able to see it very well from here unless I do some careful let's focus on those first 2 frets like so. See if you can see what's going on. So the first thing I want to do is I want to just get a tiny lift on this side of the fret. So these are pretty sharp pliers. Actually, they've already suffered a little bit of damage, so kind of expensive, but I've lost a tiny bit on the face of them. So all I'm really going to do to begin with is just go along here. See, it's easy to fall off, you see that? What I want to do is just get a little bite under the fret. So a little bit of heat and a little bit of a bite under the end. And this is actually can often be the most difficult bit. You can't see me now, can you? So if I zoom out a bit, go all the way down. So I'm just going to fire all the way down here, make sure I got everything just a little bit snipped, and so I can see that it lifts up the end of the tang, the end of the fret, and I will get them all lifted, and then I'll come back to the beginning and I will pull the frets up one by one. One of my 2 ebooks, in fact it's the second one, called 6 Steps to Guitar Build Heaven. I show how to upcycle an old neck and refret it using very simple tools. So in fact I only use a snap-off blade to most of the work to refret, which sounds pretty terrifyingly dangerous, and it is, I guess, if you're not careful holding any kind of blades, but you don't need, it's not vital to have expensive tools, although of course it does help. It's always helpful to have quality tools. It makes the job easier usually. So I didn't realize what a little ding I've taken out of that. So I come back to the beginning here and I add on some heat, and I support the soldering iron on the blades of the thingy pliers here, and I'm kind of just biting my way along and making sure that I'm lifting out the fret tang. And once I've done that, I've sort of nibbled my way to get the fret out, and I do the same. You can hear a little bit of bubbling of the water, or boiling of the water I should say, and you can either just nibble away and pull up with each little bite you take, by which time the fret will come out, or you can, if you're feeling brave and you think the wood is soft enough to do it, you can kind of pull out or rock the pliers, cutters, what are these called, pullers. You can rock them a little bit and lever out the neck, but the fret, oh my god. Anyway, so I just thought I would get this going tonight. I've done another guitar setup, so I'll just get a little bit ahead of the game here before I head home. So when the new wire comes tomorrow, I think I can't remember what day I've got this scheduled for, but I'm just jumping a little bit ahead since I made good progress with another job. So this is coming out, or these frets are coming out without any tear out or pull up, or whatever you might want to call it. The wood is oily and soft enough. What I will do is, once I've removed all the frets, then I will check the radius of the neck, and then we can flatten the neck back to perfectly flat, and then we can re-radius the board, which will take away the old wear. So there's some finger pitting down here, which a lot of people like to keep in. Some people are happy to have it renewed and refreshed, and from a refretter's point of view, it's a lot better to refresh and re-radius the board. And I know that isn't, it's in certain cases it's not appropriate because that vintage mojo is very important in some cases, but if it were just a matter of refretting and what the tech preferred, the tech will usually prefer a re-radiused board, because it makes sure that it's smooth and flat and there's no imperfections to get in the way of a good snug fitting refret, because that's really what I'm aiming for as a priority. The last thing I want is for example, worst case would be an old vintage Fender maple board with gloss finish, poly finish over it, which is all flaked off and coming away in clusters, probably because they've done it in the way they refinish it. Fender Factory, which is to spray over the frets in a kind of carpet of poly finish, and that is an invitation for it to fall off anyway, but it also falls apart whenever you come to refret it, and it's practically impossible to do it cleanly. You may get lucky. I've done a few where I've got lucky, but most of the time the finish on the fingerboard just falls away, and you reach a point where your refret stops looking mojo-ish and starts looking really shabby, and there's nothing worse than, you know, doing a refret and giving back something that you think looks untidy, even if it's nothing you can do about it. It's the manufacturing process that was, or the manufacturing procedure that they settled on in Fender in its early days, whereby it was cheaper, saved time to get the frets in first and then finish over the top of them, which is a real pain for the luthier of the future. I think it looks terrible anyway. I think it looks cheap, because the finish goes up and over the frets in a sort of carpet, and you can see that the reflection follows this gloopy carpet of finish. So you get these kind of, when you look at it, when it's reflecting light, you get this kind of shimmery, different highlights. You can spot it straight away, and it looks a bit amateurish, really. But it's understandable that they do it that way, because it's cheaper and quicker from a factory perspective. To do it the other way means you not only have to take time to get it right to begin with, but you also have to make sure once you've done it, you are obliged to when you've done the fretting, when you put the finish on and finish it to a nice gloss, then you've got to refret on top of that nice gloss finish, and you can't really afford any marks or anything, so it's very vulnerable to marks if you do it that way around. So it's a big challenge to keep it clean. So that's a quick look. I'm just going to do a quick visual check to make sure I'm back to flat, and it's going to have a few little bumps here and there because of the kind of grime either side of the fret slots. Well, we're at slack here on the truss rod, so there's no further we can go anyway. So that's us flat. Next question is, what's the original radius on this? So we would think it might be 9.5. In fact, it could be, oh yeah, it's definitely not. It's actually flatter than 9.5, strangely. It's a bit flatter than 10, which is really weird. That's probably wear. So it's looking like a 12. How about that? It's actually near enough for 12. Did you know that, Ed? So it's not exactly a classic Strat radius. It's a modern one, maybe. So before I do any sanding here, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to check with you. This will do for tonight. I'm going to hang this up, but I'll check with Ed just now or a bit later when I get home, and I will check on the radius that he wants this. It's currently 12, but it might feel nicer or it might be more vintagey as a 9.5. So let us make sure of that before we do anything else. So I don't know if you can now see, let's do a zoom in. If you can now see, we've taken all the frets out and the end fills are all intact still. So that's the finish that goes over them. And actually, even down here where there's practically no finish remaining, it's just, sorry, it's just wood. Not very good at focusing, are you? Down here, where it's just wood, you might not be able to see. It's very hard to see actually. It's still filled in, even though there's no lacquer here, or no poly or no finish here, but it's still filled in. So there's a kind of been an end fill of some material. It's pretty dark. I would probably use the 2-part resin that I used for setting some fret markers that I've just installed in a new neck I'm making. So you can see that what we've got here is just the old grime from the years of play, but we do want to get rid of all of that, from the point of view of cleaning up this surface. So there are ways you can do it. I mean, this is one of them that's very quick and not very good at preserving the line here, because if we put a new fret on here, of course it will stick out either side and we'll see it. So it's better that we do the whole thing, which is why I don't mind doing that. Another little method I often use is a little tool that I made myself out of some bent fret wire with the tang removed, and this bit makes a kind of radiused, makes me a radiused tool, which I can, if I'm careful, this is very crunchy here, so we don't want to fret on top of that. So let's say we were going to keep all the original darkened grime on this fingerboard, so I could try my best to use this, I don't know if you can see, but the grime comes off there. So we're basically smoothing out this grimy strip where the fret tang goes in, and so we're just cleaning up a little strip either side of the slot, and it's painstaking and it's a pain as well. Painstaking and pain giving, but that is much smoother than that, and I would be mildly happy to fret onto that. That's obviously not going to happen with old stuff. You can also see here that this is being cut back like as if it was being put on a bound neck. So there's a little bit of tang undercut there, again, which I could do. We could leave these ends, if we wanted to, we could leave the fills intact. The only reason I tend not to want to do that is because it's actually quite hard cleaning out these slots when you don't get to the end. There are a couple of little saw type of things you can use, but I might be trying to go to the end of the fret like so. I use a blade and just get as close as I can, clean it down to there, give it a little tap and you get most of the grime out, and then you can come the other way. If I can see where I'm at, come the other way, and you can feel with the blade what the grime or any remaining obstructions in there. Now you may be able to see now that I've messed that up anyway. So where is it? It's there. No, where's my finger? Can you see that I've just knocked out this little end fill? And that's because it's in the unfinished part of things. So it's just a little bit of grime basically. So now you'll be able to see that we've got a clear run into this fret end there. See that? So the slot is now pretty much comes all the way to there. So as it happens, we'll clean it all out with we'll clean it out by using a fret saw, and it'll be one very like this one here. In fact, it's the exact same one. So we would pull inwards all the way down this side. If you burst outwards and there's any finish, it tends to burst the finish out, and it can pull a big flake off. So we just sort of get the ends there and cut in. And then what I'll do is, once I've gone all the way up this side, I will come back, turn it round and come back the other side. So that's just about cleaning those end fills now. And I will fill them again with a little bit of 2-part medium quick dry resin. which I say I actually bought from StewMac for filling in or seating fret mark dots. So all the way up to here, all the way up to the end, and then turn it round and come back down. So all these, you may be able to see the slots neatly cut, and then we'll come back and pull inwards again all the way down the other side. Like so. And once that's done, I can then go through the whole fret length or slot length and make sure everything's cleaned out. You can hear that crunchy bit of end fill. This is where we're cutting into the poly, so it's making a little cracking noise. There's no simple way of doing it, but pulling inwards is better than pushing outwards. I found the hard way. So there's that. That's all pretty nice and clean. So then, if we were thinking about cleaning out the slots, we'd be looking to run over here with the saw, following the radius like so. Now it all actually looks and feels, I've got a depth guide here, but it actually feels, the fret slots feel very clear, but there is a bit of detritus coming out, as you can see, so that's helpful. I'm just going through it once as an initial run through, but once I've done any fret radiusing, board radiusing, there'll be a load of dust in those slots and we'll do it again. But this is just a sort of initial one to make sure there's no major problems. Little bits of detritus coming out. So this is if you measure the depth of this is about nearly 4 millimeters, including the blade. So that's well deep enough to put any new fret tang in. Okay, so that, as far as I'm concerned, is a good point to stop. I can feel the smooth bits that I've done here, but I can also feel the crunchy bits I haven't done. It'll look and feel fantastic when it's refreshed. There's nothing unusual. It's a little bit thicker at this end, the board, than it is at this end, but there's nothing to worry about. It's quite common. Actually, a little bit thicker on this side than on this side, so slightly uneven somewhere. But anyway, I'll hang it up and we'll see you for the next part. Hello there. Welcome back to the refret on Ed's neck, and I'm going to lightly radius the fretboard first, clean it all up, and then I'm going to use a bit of 180 afterwards. So this has got some fret grooves in here, so if we're going to remove them and make this into a new fresh neck, we're going to get stuck in like so. You can see that it obviously becomes a lighter colour, and before long we get to see the worn out bits, and they'll show up. I'm just kind of keeping this clear of grime, so you can see that the dents are showing up quite clearly down there, and that's very common for a old style neck. So I'll just go with this 80 grit until we're down flush to the fresh wood, I suppose, and then we'll just go over it with the 180, which will give us that new or lighter finish, and we should be ready then. Or we could do it with a 240 as well. Probably just do that by hand. So we've got the 12-inch radius block here, which is the radius that this neck came in, so we retained that. I checked with Ed to see whether he wanted the neck to be 12 still or go to 9.5, but he was happy with the 12-inch radius of this particular neck, so that's what we're doing. We've got another one. I've just been given a freebie neck from Neil, which is absolutely beautiful wood. It's a very different kind of fingerboard, but it's got an absolutely gorgeous pattern. So while I'm doing this one, I've just grabbed some gold wire, which I have from StewMac. It's not Evo gold, but it's the nearest thing. It's probably a phosphor bronze type of alloy, he said, as if he knew what he was talking about. Anyway, so I just thought, since I'm doing one neck, why don't we do a second one as well? And this one's kind of a nice finish already, so it doesn't need any re-radiusing. So there's one tiny little dip in the fingerboard up there, so we'll just do a little bit more to level it out. So I've had one of those kind of 1 step forward, 5 to the side and 8 backwards days today. I was busy making a neck from scratch, and I've managed to miscalculate the thickness of the fingerboard, so I've got too much fingerboard and not enough maple at the back, and I just could feel the wood thinning out underneath my sanding. There's not enough wood on the back side. In other words, the truss rod cavity is too close to the back of the wood, so I have to start again. I could have kicked myself, but as I just was saying a moment ago on another video, the thing you've got to do is, if you make an absolute screw up, the worst thing you can do is beat yourself up about it. You know, I've done that too many times in my life. So I'm determined to just get on and redo it. And yes, it's cost me probably about 70 quid plus time. But, you know, you just got to do what you got to do, haven't you? Right, there goes the finish. So that's just, I don't want to take any more, but that's almost there. It's not too skinny, the fingerboard, I've got to say. There's quite a bit of room there, so we probably could just take a tiny bit more. I'm trying not to press down too much. I don't want to bend the neck while I'm doing this. I think I should be all right there. Yeah. And another go with this one. This is a point where you probably want to just make sure when you re-radius a neck like this, or tidy or clean it up, you don't want to leave it too sharp edged, because it does get quite a machine cut edge. So I'm just manually go over it and make sure it's got a nice soft edge to it. And of course it's got the Watsits are full of, the slots now are full of dust, which I have to get out. And so once we've done that, so there's quite a bit of cleaning up the frets slots to do. You know, the most important thing about, oh, I've done that. Scrape down the bloody surface. The most important thing when you're cleaning up a fingerboard like this is that you clean out the slots, because you've got to make them take the new frets without any sticking up or failing to sit flush. Okay. So what we're going to do, I'll do it in a minute off camera. I'm going to clean out all these slots, going to take it over there, and we'll start cutting the fret wire when this is cleaned up. Just hold on, I'll put this on charge before we run out. Okay, let's turn this off because it's probably bleeping and blooping. So we have the press, we have the glue, we have some paper, we have a wet cloth. We have a beautiful day outside. Look at that. We had Mary Trump on podcast there, but that's okay. I'll give that a miss for now. So what I've done is I have cleaned up the slots and they're all at their correct depth. Now what I've also got is I've got the wire that I bent just slightly over under 12 so that it has a bit of grip, and I've also got the tighter wire for the other neck, which is going to be 9.5, so I've bent that tighter than that. So what we're going to do for starters is I'm going to put this up here. I better get the old mirror, so I can stand some chance of seeing what I'm doing. Something like that. Okay. So put that out of the way. So first things first, we're going to cut the wire to size. So let's start with this. So line up, cut, and we'll just sort of stick in there. Line up. So we've obviously got to prepare the wire as well. So right now we're just cutting it just over size. It's going to be undercut, so we don't need to cut too much over. Probably I'm being a bit over generous there anyway. So we'll just keep it running along. And there goes my thinners expanding in the warmth. So I'm basically going to cut my way all the way along here to get a set of frets, and I'll probably have enough for some spares in case I need them. Remember that the neck is currently in a dead flat configuration. So I checked the original tang width, and the original tang width was around about 0.6. So that's what I was measuring. So this is going to be about 0.6 as well. So that should be a straightforward fit. There shouldn't be any need to do any widening of slots. But you can sort of, with a bit of experience, you can tell quite soon on if you do need to widen the slots. And I tend to use, believe it or not, a coping saw blade to widen them. That tends to be perfectly good. It's about 0.7 or something like that, so it gives me an extra width if I need it. So what have I got here? I've got 1.5 meters of this wire. Whenever I buy something, there's no point getting left with half a guitar's worth, which is what you get if you buy 2 meters. You've usually got your whole one neck, followed by probably enough to do half another neck. So that tends to get hung up on a pin over there or on a nail, and it gets lost or misplaced or mislabeled or whatever. So a much better way of doing it is to buy 3 meters instead of the 2, and then that 3 meters can get cut in half straight away, and we know that we've got 2 necks worth. It costs, obviously I'm spending more at the beginning, but I end up with some spare, stay there, some spare material, which is probably a good thing. So you can see I've got enough here plus a little bit left over It looks like I've got a ton, but by the time we've got all of these cut, it won't be as much as you think. So this is one of the jobs that I really enjoy. It's especially when it's a bit of cleaning up like this. So we've gone from a very old looking neck to what's going to be effectively brand new looking on the fretboard. Now I know that has a different vibe to the worn out, but it's still got all its sort of dings and character on the maple side of the neck. It'll just be the fingerboard that's fresh on this one. From a fretter's point of view, it's far better as a fretter to have a re-radiused fingerboard like this, because I can be certain that as I press these frets on when I've cut them all to length, that I can be absolutely certain that the fretting is going to be good, so I won't have to worry about pulling frets and doing sections or whole loads of it again. So here we are down at the last fret, and then we've got this spare bit which I took off to one side. Hello fly. Now I've got a bit of left over here, and so I'm going to get me my other cutters just in case. These are older fret trimmers which have been damaged a lot by stainless steel. When they say that stainless steel knackers up your tools, they really mean it. Let's see if I can zoom in a bit. No idea. Oh yeah, I've zoomed in. I don't know really how well that's going to work as a visual thing. One more thing I could use is a pen or two. So that is ready to go. See if I can see roughly what's going on. Yeah, okay. So I've got my tang cutter, because we're going to do this with an end fill. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut a tang under the end of here, like so, and then I'm going to cut off a little bit near the end. We don't want too much overhanging, but then what I'm going to do is I'm going to place it like that, kind of flush with the edge. And so I'm going to go down all of them and do that. So first of all, an overhang and a snip back. These are a little bit not a great tool anymore, unfortunately. Run it nearly flush to the edge and press it down. Then what I'll do afterwards is I'll come and mark the edges down here, and we'll end up cut to length on both sides. So it's nice and calm and contemplative a process, and all you really need to keep in mind when you're refretting is preparation of the slots, the fingerboard, whatever you're fretting to, and then preparation of the frets themselves so that they are cut to the right length. Now there is another little extra bit that I can probably end up doing here in a minute, and that is, even when you cut these off, actually this is a pretty good one. This is a deluxe StewMac version of the tool. In fact, it does cut flush. I used to have to file a little bit underneath the tang, the fret crown where I'd cut the tang, because it just left a slightly raised bit. But this is so nifty. It's so much better than the other one. I mean, the other one was originally good, but it just reached a point where it had literally worn itself out, and so it was taking several bites at things. And so anyway, all the bits end up going on the floor, usually brushed off, and they get vacuumed up later on. So I'm just sort of pushing those to the end down. You can see that now we've got all the excess really sticking out on one side, and then we're going to basically repeat this whole process down the other side, and get ourselves a nice, much shorter set of frets. And then we go and press them in, fill it up a little bit with glue, wood glue, just to help it. Again, you can usually feel as you're pressing that the tang and the slot work together, if they do, assuming they do. And the glue is just a very small insurance policy, I suppose you could call it. It's not strictly necessary, and there's some days where you'll be refretting and you'll just think, no, that doesn't need any glue at all. It's very satisfying when you get to that stage, but it's not always the case. Now, I used to think that when we talked about uneven frets and fret leveling, I used to think that the weak link in that process that would create uneven frets, I used to think it was down to the fretting process, that somebody would kind of tap in some frets that weren't properly fitted, or they weren't hammered down quite right, or whatever, or too much even. But actually I've since found out that most of the fret unevenness that I end up leveling out, and will do on this neck, is, well, won't do on this neck, but most of the fret unevenness is due to the compression of the neck under load. Now, not most, a good chunk of it. So the trouble with doing a neck only refret, from my perspective, is that while I can level the frets relative to each other with the neck in this condition now, set out like this, what I can't do is level it under compression. I'd have to build quite an exotic jig for that, and I haven't quite really worked it out yet, but it's something I would like to be able to do if I had the time and the materials to do it, because it means that I could harness up every neck, but every neck has got its own set of holes in its own positions, and I would have to make a sort of disposable plate or a throwaway. Each neck going onto the jig would have to have its own throwaway plate, which is not impossible, but it has to be then cut, drilled very specifically for that neck, and then we have to kind of make it, probably have to shim it to make it part of the overall rig. It's actually, it's quite a bit harder than it sounds at first go. Anyway, it would be an ideal thing, because I think it would give customers that extra bit of accuracy that I can get when I have the whole guitar. But to be fair, this is no less accurate. What I can do with this is no less accurate than anyone else does with a normal refret on a normal guitar that the refret and set up. It's just that the banana method of fret leveling, as we call it, just happens to have that extra bit of accuracy, or precision. Hence I always refer to it as precision leveling. So I get rid of a few bits of stuff. Now, so what I tend to do now is go back down this side here and draw me, excuse me, draw a line, just, I do it about 1 millimeter out of the, over the fingerboard, so it's close to, but not exactly on. That will leave me with a little bit to bevel off, but not too much. So I will cut to this line in a moment as we get ready to do the other end. And you see there's quite a bit, nearly 1 centimeter on some of these longer ones up here, quite a bit to cut off, but it's better to have too much than too little. Isn't there a song in there? So we don't, oh, we do need that in a second. So we take the first one and we just work off the line now. So I go to the drawn line and I line it up with my cutters there, and I do the same sort of undercut at this end, perhaps not as long, and then I just square off that end like so, and then we should have a fret that's just perfectly fitting with a little overhang on either edge, and that's ready to be tapped in. So again, it's a little boring all the way through here, bits off, a little bit of undercut, not much. I mean, strictly speaking, I don't even need to really trim that off, but I don't know, it's my kind of habit of just squaring it off. So it makes the end beveling file tackle it more easily if it isn't jagged, believe it or not. So just off for the excess, a bit of an undercut, bit of a square up, really just only enough to square that off, and then in it goes, and we're ready to do it. So lovely, you know, meditative process on a Wednesday evening. Probably a Wednesday evening. Oh God, yeah, this thing about this screw up I made on this neck, I'm no longer making. It really is. It's one of the things I've learned over the years is you cannot afford to go into a tantrum of feeling bad about it. I know what happened. I made the fingerboard too thick, and I had probably a couple of mils more in the fingerboard than I needed, and the result of that is that too much of the truss rod was below. I needed a total thickness of fingerboard and maple, and basically all I've done is I've raised the bulk of it up around the truss rod. So I've gone like this, so the truss rod is close to the bottom edge, rather than if I thinned the fingerboard down it would be further up. And it was so precise a deal that there was no leeway, no spare room. So I paid the price, literally, and time and money. But you know, I kind of caught myself wanting to be all catastrophic about it, you know, and I can't believe it. And then I think, well, I can believe it. I know what I've done. Get on with it. I just feel sorry for my customer who's going to have to wait an extra week or something while I backtrack and get started again with a new blank and a new fingerboard and a new everything. But you know, like I say, you live and you learn and you make it right and you get back on the horse as soon as you can. You know, and if I've made a mistake, and I have, you know, then I'm going to just, there's no extra value in tantruming about it and treating myself badly. You know, I didn't make the mistake because I'm a villain. I made the mistake because I overlooked something, and you know, the cost is the cost. It's you know, some money I don't get to spend on us or whatever. But you know, we're not going to die, and there's, as you all know, there's far worse things going on right now in the world. So I don't have anything to complain about, really, at all. So I am not going to. I'm just going to get on and redo it. But I do remember, you know, not that many years ago, I would be wailing and gnashing my teeth and calling myself all manner of names because I couldn't believe how stupid I was. And I think, you know, like all many kids, someone at some point in my childhood, my formative years, someone called me stupid. You know, and I guess often we carry on that if we're sort of going to a bit of a childish reaction to making a mistake. It's quite easy to go into that sort of, you useless, you'll never amount to anything. Call yourself. So I've given up that self-flagellating, I promise you. There's enough people out there waiting to flagellate you without doing it to yourself. You know what I'm saying? Do you feel me? Anyway, so this is what refretting takes. A lot of sitting around and carefully doing things bit by bit until you can do to the next stage, which is whacking on the glue and mashing down the bitey thing, the press. All things that I bought early on in doing this work, and they've kind of been with me ever since, working perfectly fine. They last forever, some of these things. You know, even my first nibbling tools or whatever they're called, tang nibblers. You know, they must have lasted nearly 10 years before they finally conked out. You know, and I don't think I bought them from StewMac. I can't remember, but had I done it, I could probably even have sent them back to StewMac, and they more than likely would have sent me a replacement. They're very good like that, word has it. But actually, I'm glad that I didn't, you know, I'm glad they weren't, because actually I think for the price I paid for them, you know, 10 years is more than enough to expect from them. I mean, blimey, it's being greedy if you expect more than 10 years out of a tool like this. Anyway, so I wasn't, you know, same thing as when I realized that they were, my original ones were broken, and they were just, it meant I was wasting more frets than I was cutting, and it didn't take long before I realized I had to spend the money and buy new ones. But honestly, I couldn't feel resentful about even that. You know, same thing applied. When you've had 10 really good years of value from something, how can you really be churlish about it and, you know, get all self-pitying? I mean, 10 years for what, 75 quid of that, or whatever they cost, I don't know. I mean, fantastic bargain. I mean, fantastic value. Okay, so you can see now that I've got well, there's little bits of fret falling off everywhere, as you can tell. So what I'm not going to bore you with is me doing the same to the other one that I'm refretting. I'll do that after I've pressed all these in. But since this is heads, we're going to carry on. So what I now will do is I'll take these off and line them up in the order that they appear in, and I've got my wet cloth to help me clean the fretboard just as I go along. That's a nice thing about wood glue. Some people like to use super glue, and certainly if you're worried at all about any too loose slots or anything like that, then using super glue is probably a good idea. But wood glue, if you're going to use it at all, is, can I get this back out? Let's see if you can, sorry, trying to see what we can see. Well, there's me and there's the thing, right? Probably as exciting as it's going to get. Press. So what I'm going to do, just to start with, is I'm going to load up one slot with some glue, and I'm not being too careful. It doesn't really matter because I'm going to clean it all out. Hence all these little bits of paper I've got stacked up here, which are all for this purpose. So I get my first fret and my glue, and I basically I'll put it on there. And personally, I like to have a little wooden block of some sort. Is this the one I would use? Probably not. Let's just do it with the hammer. I would probably just like to tap it lightly to make it seat there. Then I would, we probably need this. I'll get my neck caul upside down. I use this old stretchy thing, which has probably had its day as well. So basically, I put that on there, and I come down, just make sure my press is in the right angle, and then I just press it on here like so. And what I often do, if I'm in the mood, if it feels like it's the right thing to do, is I put this on here, attach that down there, and then that comes up to something like that. And so I've got it locked on, it's holding the fret in place. It's usually better, you do that typically if you were using super glue, because super glue, it really benefits from being held in place for that short amount of time until it sets, especially on a warmish night like tonight. But this wood glue doesn't really need that. We're not really needing that. We're banking on a good fit. And so what I would typically do at this point is I would clean off the glue like so, get my wet pad, give it a little run over like that, and then on the ends, get the excess off. Put that there probably. And then I'm just going to give it another quick squeeze down just to see how it sits. Hanging off it a little bit. But that actually feels like it fits or squeezed down nicely, and then I can just go down the edges with my thumbnail or a sharp thing like a screwdriver. So there's the first one put in, and you know, you get to look at it, examine it, make sure that it's seated correctly. One of the things I could do with is some compressed air, because if you want to fill the end gaps, what you really want at this point is the glue to be out of those end fills. And sometimes I find it quite handy if you can just blow it out so there is a gap to fill later on. But sometimes it doesn't play ball. But like I say, if you can get the glue out of there, that's better. So then I tend to, normally I chuck the stuff on the floor in a box like that, so I can bin it easy. And then we line up the next one. Like so we do this heel part this way up, and then I'll switch this over, and then we'll rest the neck in there for the next part. So once you've, I tend to do a sort of 3 or so in a line, and I just get a feel for how they're going in, and I get to look closely at them and make sure that they're all, stay there, make sure that they're all seated and there's no clear evident gaps. So, you know, if I want to grab hold of this and put that on there, like I say, that keeps a bit of pressure on it. Not strictly necessary for wood glue, but quite satisfying at the same time. Go there, I tell you. But really, it's wearing out, that thing, getting a bit old. So after a while, you tend to want to just clean the underside of here as well, just to make sure that any glue that's sticking there doesn't end up, well, just keeps it a little bit cleaner. So a little bit of a clean up there with the water. Again, it really just helps to keep everything as tidy as it can be, and gets rid of, helps you wipe up the blobs at the end. And then once that's done, you can clean the ends out, like so-ish. And then again, you're looking down, taking a look in the light, whatever place, whatever angle you get to see it nicely, and you're looking for a nice uniform seating. You don't want anything sticking up compared to anything else. So that looks pretty good at the moment. So I'd kind of do 3 in a row now, just because I can. You don't want to rush, because if you've, let's say I put the next 3 in and I've realized that they're not seating properly and something's not right, it's a good time, I always tell myself to stop, and I have to consider what may be the problem. And it may be that the frets aren't prepared properly, or it may equally be that the fingerboard is not, the slots aren't wide enough, or something's going wrong in that area, in which case I've got to rethink. There's no point plodding on. And in the past I've plodded onwards, and this sort of desire to get something finished can be overwhelming, and you end up fretting a whole neck that you just know you shouldn't have. It was a false economy, because you end up having to redo it all again. And don't I know that feeling? So swinging on that one, nice fit, nice fit. Yeah, nice fit. Get a bit of glue overspill there. So we've got sort of a lot of loose glue, which we get rid of, and then we wet it up a bit, just to make sure nothing dries in warm temperatures like this, the glue can dry along on the fingerboard very quickly, but it's easy to remove, but it's still nicer that it doesn't get stuck on there at all if you can help it. So I'm running my thumbnail down the edge of it. It should be a good fit. And again, just blow the ends if I may. It'll just give me, if I do that, it seems a bit over the top, but if I make sure there's a little gap, it just makes sure that I can get a little bit of resin into the end there when I fill, rather than not being able to, because I do want to put a little end fill in. So, okay, so now we've got all 3 in, or 5 in, sorry. Now what I'm looking for is sort of an overall look, and it's looking absolutely spot on. There's nothing out of the ordinary. Now there's a bit there I'm seeing could be standing up a bit, so I'm going to just re-grab the thing and with a squeeze. Let's see if there's anything not seating. Now what you can find is there can be a little roll off on the fingerboard that's slightly different in one place compared to another, and that's kind of quite natural. It occurs, and your eye, if you've got a sharp eye, you may just pick it up, and it may be that you have to let the leveling process take care of it if it's still there at the end. There's a clean view. Get rid of this fluffy bit here. See, a little blower tube straw would be kind of handy at this point, just for clearing those up, but I haven't got one. Well, I've got a tube, but I don't have compressed air. Okay, that's looking okay. So I might sort of go forward now at 2 at a time, let's say. That's very boring. Shall I give you let's give you an uncluttered, closer up a look. Can't see what you can see. Let's do 3 in that position. I'm going to switch over around about here when we run out of heel support. So the process of getting the glue in is not very scientific. It's just a matter of running through and making sure it's in there. Better more than less, really, because you can always wipe it clean. And then the line up here is important. They've got to be on as spot on as they can be. We don't want to push the tang right out to the edge. We've made it so that there's a little undercut, and we need a little bit of each end of the fret sticking out. And so that's kind of determined by our fingertips, really, getting a feel for the equal spacing. So at that point then we go to the squeezy thing there. What you can see and what you can't, but whether this will work at all. There we are. Trying to turn it round so we can get a go at it with the camera standing where it is, which isn't very sensible. Right. Squeeze and push and squeeze and push and squeeze. There we go. Some cleaning up to do. So I'll try and move you out of the way now. Something like that. blobs at the end, followed by wetting it down. So even if you think everything's going, see there's a little bit of overhang here, and that's because there's a bit of a roll off on the fretboard, and I'm not going to solve that other than by not having this little bit of roll off. Now what I will do is I'll go in and go back and squeeze it down with the press just to make sure. Blow some of the glue out onto the fretboard. Right, just another squeeze just to make sure. Oops. That's a bit wonky. Not the fret, but the pressy thing. Okay, so we're gonna, once this is done, we're gonna end up running down here with the end beveling file, and that's going to take all these extra little bits off and bevel the frets flush, so it's going to look much sharper cut. I'm just going to look at the little reflection on here. Yeah, it's pretty good actually, so I'm happy with that. Going to keep going. Let's do another. I think we're going to do another 2 in this upside down position, and then we'll turn it over. These neck cawls, the things with the cork on them, they can be quite deceptive. If you're not used to it or you're not sure how it works, you can trust it a little bit too much, and actually in certain positions the end of this cawl can damage the neck. I found out the hard way, as always, which resulted in me having to do a kind of a refinish on the guitar, which another one of those, oh, you live and you learn. And actually I don't really think that particular situation was ever highlighted to me as a warning, something to be alerted to, so I had to find out the very hard way, and it was a pain. So I'll show you what I mean in a minute when I get rid of all this glue. Yeah, you can't use this the neck cawl all the way across, or all the way for all of the frets. You have to turn it upside down, otherwise you'll end up risking getting imprints on the maple side of, or this side of the guitar, which if it's an old and battered thing you might just get away with it, but if it's somebody's brand new USA Fender American Professional or something, it's not what you want at all. So let me just blow these ends as much as I can. Thank you and thank you. Okay, so I check again in the light, by the light of the sunshine. Nice, nice, nice. Really good, really good. Any tiny variations, obviously, we're going to pick up with the fret leveling process, and that's what it's for. Now, here's the point at which I'm going to switch this over now, because we're going to end up putting that in there and pressing against that to press them in. If you try and do it there, you may see that you end up pressing that against this bit here if you're pressing to there, for example. And that is not what you want to be doing. So that is much better to use the flat side of it. And if you have to, for example, if you think you need to support this bit, then I put a piece of foam under there to make sure it's supported. But now, having gone let's say to the 12th fret, I've done the 12th fret, so now I feel like I can switch over to using this safely without running the risk of crimping or damaging the end of the neck. Like I say, you only learn it the hard way. If you think it's going to work all the way too far, either this end or that end, you end up paying for it. Whoever tells you that? So I'm sort of skipping along at around 2 at a time at the moment, and I'm just making sure everything lines up with my fingertips to begin with as I put it down. So the same amount of overhang each side as a feel thing. Now we go onto here and bring that down. Squeeze and squeeze. Again, I don't mind having a lot of glue around, better than too little. So yes, I had to immediately go and order myself and some more neck blanks. I needed one anyway, an extra one, so I've got a couple of neck blanks, another piece of really nice rosewood for the fingerboard, and thought to myself, well, okay, I've got the final thing that I needed to know, which I overlooked, so I'm not going to mess that up this time. Which is good. So tonight I shall draw a sideways diagram, dimensional diagram, and just make sure what I actually have got in clearance for the neck I'm actually going to make. And the reason it's not absolutely bog standard going from like a template is because I'm making a new neck for a custom guitar whose body and neck pocket already exists, so I have to make it end up like the previous one, which is a little bit more challenging than just making a neck from a bog standard template. Plus the fact the neck I'm making is a 24-inch scale 21 fret neck, which is like a mini Strat scale. So anyway, it's been a learning experience, and I've made quite a few necks before, and I've just seemed to have run into a few problems this time that I didn't run into before. So you thank the universe and say, well, that's great for that lesson, thank you. It's like, you have unlocked life lesson number 2,350 out of 50,000. When you have completed this, go back to the beginning of the level. So you can see that after having assessed in the first few frets that basically things are going in the right direction. In other words, there's nothing preventing the seating of the frets. There's nothing, the slots aren't resisting them. So I'm confident that the preparation of the fingerboard and the frets themselves is good, which means I sort of can jog along, and with this, not the brain off, but knowing that it's all going all right, really. so hard to get that out without an air blower. I must remember to get one. It would make this a little bit less, I don't know what the word would be, less of a circus. Right, let's do, we got a few more and we're nearly there. And then what I'll do is I'll switch off while I take care of the, or fret the other one with the gold frets, my new one from Neil. Yeah, and I will come back to this one after I've done that one, and by that time this glue will have pretty much dried. It'll be about an hour. It's not essential anyway, but it'd be nice if it has set a bit. And then we'll end bevel this and probably sort of do some hand filing as well. One of the reasons I used to quite liked using super glue when it came to fretting is that one of the things about super glue is I always felt quite confident doing the end beveling the same day with super glue, because you knew that the thing was stuck down and the frets were in as good as they were ever going to be in. But I've found that this sort of same applies to using wood glue, really tight bond, I should say, providing the fret fit and the tang fit is good. Truth is, if your fit of your frets is loose, then to be honest, glue is the only hope you've got of saving it without widening your fret tangs, which is a doable thing. You have to kind of pinch or twist little burrs into your fret tangs, so it's completely doable, but you have to kind of be confident that that's the problem you're facing in order to start crimping the frets, because it sort of tears the wood a little bit. I mean, it's supposed to, because that's what bites into the wood to keep the frets in when it's in fact the tang is slightly loose. But anyway, that's the whole point. Better that you didn't do it to begin with, but sometimes you have to. Good. Let's put these final 4 in together. We're now so confident. I don't know what we're looking at here. Oh yeah, there's the 4. So most of the time, it's not an awful lot of time spent actually pressing the frets. It's most of the time is spent preparing the surfaces, the slots, and the frets themselves. So for example, on a 12-inch radius neck like this, I've bent these in tighter than 12, probably closer to 9.5, so that they are slightly over or under radius, which way you might describe it, meaning that they're gripping a little more because of their slight overbend, which is pretty good. Helps them to hold on. So I'm going to tap all these fellows in, and then, oops, I'm making a mess with the glue, and I'm tapping it in sideways. Thank you. And get pressing. So I can't see what's going on now. Pressing and stuff and sort of. One. 2, move 3, 4. So we should be all done. Come along. Wipe up the excess. Oh, what a mess. Wet down the excess. It's not at all humid, it's dry. That's the word I'm looking for. We've got low humidity, so this is drying really quickly, which is kind of good because it means we can do the end beveling sooner rather than later. But it's bad that you're chasing the drying glue. Cutting my top lip, but it's okay. It's all for art. Come along. Okay, so that's the refret done. I'm just going to again look down and study the lighting. The lighting's looking good. There's a few ragged ends lengthwise, but that's fine. So I'm going to put this up on the side here, out the way, and switch you off because I'm going to do the other neck now, and I'll come back when I'm end beveling yours, Ed. See you in a minute. Okay, well, here we go. Time to end bevel. And this is not easy. Rule number 1, start slow. And that will help you take off the sharp bits on the ends here. Rule number 2, and the most important actually, is hold this whole block down because it wants to lift up and skate across the top. And if it does that, you are going to be in a world of misery because it'll scratch the hell out of the frets and you'll have to level them more than you would otherwise. Even if you didn't have to before, you'll have made sure that you do now. So this pressing down hand is crucial. So you can see the bits building up. But we'll get there. So it's a matter of doing it partly vertically, and then once we've got it flush vertically to the edge of the fingerboard, then we'll lean over and bevel it a bit. Lots of bits of swarf coming off here, but we get there. It's It's not too much. Now the point is, I think I've mentioned this before loads of times, that you can't end bevel flush to the wood without cutting into the finish a little bit. Otherwise, if you kind of hang back to avoid hitting the finish on the wood, you won't be flush, and that means you'll have a little bit of a blade edge hanging out. So you really do have to accept a little bit of finish damage, and if it's bad, then you have to redo it with some touch-up poly or whatever the material is, or else yeah, like I say, you either don't go flush and you don't have to redo the touch up the edge, or you do go flush and you may risk having to touch up the finish. The last fret and the first fret are usually quite hard to get to the same amount of beveling as the rest. There we go. That's feeling quite nice. Now it's obviously very sharp here anyway, because the transition between this plane and that edge here is by definition razor sharp. But what we want to make sure is we've got no burrs sticking out here, which we don't, right the way up to the end. So I'm happy with that. So now really I'm just concentrating on the angle of the bevel now. Just making sure this last one gets it. Of course it takes longer at the end where all the frets are grouped together more tightly, so you have to work that harder. Okay, so I'm happy with that on that side. So if we just take a quick close-up look, and what I'll do is I'll take this home after this and hand file it at home. So can you see we've got right to the edge there. It's very sharp. The transition between the fret is razor sharp, as you can see, so we're going to need to hand file that off. And if you can see, there's a bit of, you can see where the end beveling file has touched the finish a little bit. Well, not too much, but a little. But we have to do that, like I say, otherwise we can't get it to be flush, and it would be a horrible feeling if we didn't get it flush. So that's the bottom line. So like, what's that? Spectrum. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold that down about there. And then this one just acts as a brake to stop the heel moving, so I can put sideways pressure on it. And which way do I want this one to be really? I want it to be able to reach it. Something like there. Okay, so you can see setting it up is very important too. And then this initial run where you've got sharp, slightly jagged, uneven edges, so you can hear the block tries to catch. And we don't want to be ramming those frets sideways, so we need to kind of work it with a much lighter touch to begin with, until we get all of them approximately the same length. Starting to cut more smoothly, and again you can see me pressing down on this thing. as I said, the more bunched together they are, the harder it's going to be to get them all back flush. So it's going to require more work at this end. So we might even spin that round a bit and get inside here and lean over it a little bit just to take care of this cluster here. Just doing it out at arm's length is risking this thing lifting up and skipping. So a lot of the remainder now is going to be fine tuning work. I can even do the leveling at home as well. I don't want to do it here. We should see. It does get tiring, get achy muscles, believe it or not. So I can still feel it sharp here. So again, I'm going to sort of step into here and work inside. Now I'm going to go vertical so I can get these right to the edge, and you can see it's cutting some of the finish, which we have to do. As soon as we've got it vertical and trim back that finish, then we can concentrate on the bevel only. As you can see, we don't get rid of that. If we can get rid of that, we don't have a nice level edge. So that's feeling good. There's no burrs or there's no catch. So now we can do it all on the bevel part now. Again, we can just give ourselves some room. Just concentrate on beveling the angle. Right, I think that is pretty much it. Whew. Okay, yeah, nicely edged. Now the thing is, this is you get a bit of dust built up in the end slots, so it maybe makes sense to clean them out now. I don't know if that even works really. If we want to get a little bit of our resin in there when the time's right. Just enough to really hold and fill. I might even find something else that's a better tip than this, but who knows. I'm sorry, I don't know what you're looking at because I'm not paying you enough attention. I think maybe, I was going to say it's probably could be a bit too soft, this toothpicky thing. Yeah, maybe. That's getting rid of it's quite good. It's shifting the, what it's done is these little end fills have caught the finish dust, and so hopefully that was just, is this a bit too big? Maybe. There's not a lot of room anyway. I didn't cut back very far on any of these, so not very good. What have I got? What have I got? It's too small, too big, not big enough. Plastic, no. Nothing with a very, very fine bit on it, have I? Have I? No. It's all much of a muchness. Oh well. Probably be better with a wire brush or something. This little square end. Oh, maybe that's digging in. So it's the end of the snap off blade. Snap off. Yeah, just about. Get a little bit of a gap. Fiddly. I've got a 2-pack black resin that will go in there nicely. This side seems better all round. Doesn't seem to have got so much gunge in there, but no, I take that back. There's a few that have. Just cleaning it out like so will do. So what do I need to do to this? Well, I've got some various grades of paper, which I'm going to need when I've leveled it anyway. So I'm going to need to just go over the edge of the fingerboard here and shine it up a little bit. Not too much, because it's not really that shiny to begin with, because it's an old neck. But I need to file over these and soften them off manually. I then need to, what do I need to do? I need to level it, and I suppose the first thing I want to look at is how, whoops, there. You can't really see this, but I'm going to hold this up and enjoy. Oh, that's pretty flat, that is. Wow. Good, so we can basically just level as it is. So we want, going to get the 12-inch radius block, which is still over here. And we'll need to put some new grit on it, or actually just hold some grit on, but we're not going to use this much grit. We're going to use for 400 which is here. So, show me how I'll do it. Pretty straightforward. We'll mark up the frets. Now, let me just do something in a second. I'm assuming that I need to level these, which is kind of what I always assume, but I do have a fret leveling thing, a fret rocker here somewhere. Now the reason I don't use it anymore is because I use a different method of leveling. There's a tiny bit of rocking here on the first one, on the third one. Very little. There's one there on the outside, tiny bit. So it's pretty good. So, but I still will do some then, since there's a little bit of fret rockery. I'm going to use this like so, 400 grit, 12-inch radius. And the problem with this is it's hard to use this without scraping the hell out of this paper, unless you stick it on. It sort of ruffles up underneath, which is a bit of a pain. So I'm going to try and see if I can persuade it to behave without tearing. Obviously what we're going to check again for is the levelness. It's quite difficult to make it behave. I'm pulling on this one rather than backwards and forwards. Now I went obviously a slightly higher gauge anyway, so that we've got room for this small adjustment. I can keep it steady. Okay. So when I describe this as a basic leveling, that's what I mean. I'm happier when I do a leveling on the neck fixed to the guitar, so that I can basically do it with the compression at play. It's a little bit more accurate because it's working with the, where the paper gives up. It's working with the compression in the neck that the string loading puts on the neck, and that compression makes the neck bunch up slightly. So if you want the most accurate fret leveling, you want it with the neck under load. Now I could do leveling with this as well. I don't need the strings. I could use this same grit of paper. So it's entirely doable. So I'm still doing this. I'm doing the same thing. Well, actually, I'm not really needing to do that. I'm actually wanting this to be flat, which is going to be like this, slacked off. dead spot on. So this is how I would be doing it, or the tool I would be using to do it if we were under load. So I'm just using it as basically a flat leveling beam. I'm just running it across the radius of the frets. Let's see where we get to. Yeah, there we go. Tiny bit there. Just this one here. Now, where is it? Tiny bit there. Good. So this is as flat as you can get in uncompressed mode. Now, is that because this is not straight? Not sure I trust this entirely. It's got a bit stuck on there. First of all, do that. Tiny bit there, tiny bit there, not much. Tiny bit there, on the 13th. There's a slight dip somewhere in this, and it's giving me a false reading. Don't trust this end. There you go. This flat as well. The problem is, I don't trust these damn things. the danger of this thing is you can try and flatten it out as much as you like, but it's very hard to do. This is a brass piece here, which is nice and flat. I tell myself it's nice and flat. That's the problem. You don't know anymore. No, I don't trust it, that's why. So I'm happy with it. In fact, I'd use something else that's better. There you go, it's flat. It's much better. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is re-crown the frets, and then the job will be polish them out. But I won't polish them out until I've hand filed rounded the ends. Messy this. Okay, so how you can see, yeah, you can see. Right, let's go with the re-crowning business. So this file rounds off the edges a bit, actually. Takes some of it off, but it's not quite enough. So we'll do it with the other ones as well. So, I think, yeah, I'll take the resin home and I will do the end gaps at home at my leisure. Excuse me. Time for a new surface on here because this is pretty filthy work. The thing about working to a fret rocker as well is that you're working to an absolute levelness, which in the case of a any neck, you don't strictly need to work to absolute levelness, because you only really need to level to the playing action that you're aiming for, which is why it works so well when I do the strung up fret leveling, because the strings are on I can stop as soon as I've made the action I've chosen play how I want it to play, and I don't need to keep on making it absolutely level, because a simple way of putting it would be, if we don't really care about the unevenness below the level we've chosen, there's no point taking that away or spending fret metal to remove that if we're never going to set the action down to 0 millimeters. So I set my target action with obviously the body, neck and body joined and strung up, and then I tune the banana file, as I call it, to the curvature of the neck, and it levels the frets, but it levels also the frets that are uneven because they're pushed up by the compression effect. And that took me a long time to learn that was going on, something I didn't really even know until I'd done this for a few years. So I began to realize quite soon that this leveling with the compression at play had a positive impact. I didn't quite know how much until I'd done it a few thousand times, but and that's why I will always find me recommending that I do a refret with then a setup with the guitar strung up, because with a refret you need to level the frets and polish them out anyway, but this is leaving it a little bit less accurate than it could be if it was done in the playing configuration. I suppose that's the simplest way of putting it, and sometimes that's the whole refret followed by reload setup and the precision leveling in the playing position. Sometimes that adds up to beyond someone's budget, which is quite understandable. Okay, so that's the rounding off done. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to go over each corner, that's maybe like so, and just go into the corner just to round off that little tiny burr or sharp bit in the inside there, and then I'm going to go over the ends with some rolled up sandpaper to kind of try and round all of this off and smooth it off a bit. But this is the main bit for getting rid of the sharpness. And in a way, the sad thing about rounding it off so it's comfortable is by definition, it takes away some of the precision sharpness that you get when you level with a block, which kind of looks very cool to see that sort of highly precisely cut end of the fret. But by definition, that's sharp because you've got a machine cut or a block cut intersection between these two planes or two surfaces. So it has to get a little bit softer. One way around it, which has become quite popular, that still looks quite sharp and precise, is to utilize semi-hemispherical fret ends, and that involves preparing the fret end off before you install the fret, and that in itself is actually it's not difficult to do in a way. You can make the fret ends rounded fairly easily with a little polishing wheel or whatever, but the difficult part is getting them, because you have to cut them by eye, not with an end beveling file. That means you have to sort of choose or measure or gauge the precise length the fret is, and then you lay it or install it, and it has to be its finished length as you install it. So it's never quite as machine-like when you fit it as when you end bevel, because the Got a little black flake there. Yeah, because the other thing about end beveling, although it, like I say, it makes this very sharp cutting edge. The other positive thing about it is that it makes sure all the ends are the same length. You don't have to try and hand cut them or measure them to be the same length. And so as a result, a hand measured, hand cut fret which has been hemispherically ended by hand and then installed, that can often end up looking like the edge wanders a little if you look sort of down the neck in a straight line, because it's very, very difficult. Now, I guess in the factories they have some way of making sure that they're machine cut to the exact length and so on, but when you do it by hand you never get quite the same precision. Okay, so now we've got our re-crowned frets, we've got a nice rounded edge, but it's a good time to roll off or soften off the fret ends. And I often find that a piece of rolled up stuff, this is 180 grit, not a bad start point, then we'll go to a 320 afterwards, but a sort of tube, a slightly spongy tube of thingy gives you a mixture of, it cuts the very end smooth, it polishes up the fret edges, the fingerboard edge a little bit, takes away any burrs, and then when you get it to this point, it sort of goes over the top of the fret and rounds that off a little bit as well. It gives you a nice, starting to be a nice soft finish. And then we'll do the same over here along the edge onto the metal bit. And then over onto the top a little bit. So that's nearly there. You can see I can brush it up and down with the cloth without anything sticking to it, which is good. There's no catching or anything like that. So what I do now is get a bit of 320, roll this up either inside of this one, so outside of this one, or on its own. Just use this as the sort of tube to hold it. 240, not nothing else, not 320. So roll this up in the lighter grit, like so. Okay, so the same thing, a bit of kind of rounding off, it sort of evens out the finish a little bit where it's been scraped, and then on the edge, and then up onto the shoulders of the frets, if you like. Now when we sand out and polish out the rest of the frets, this will kind of blend into these ends and they'll look as if they're all part of the same kind of nice finish. There we go. So it's all looking dusty and stuff at the moment, but of course we'll oil it at the end anyway. But now that's beautiful to hold. You can feel the frets are nice and tall, but they are softened at the edges. You can feel them because they're taller than they were before, but they are softened. Yeah, I'll probably just have to do that more. your own bloody air blower. Right, and what I'll do is I'll take this home at this stage now, and I'll mask it off at home, and I'll polish it out at home. And because I need to do the resin overnight, that needs about an hour to set at least. So I'll do that overnight. Nearly there. Yeah. So I'll just fill those end bits, and then I'll sand those off as I'm doing the whole sanding. Well, it's maybe nice and dizzy. So thanks for watching. Hope you found that informative. See you for, what am I seeing you for? No, we're pretty much done. I'm not gonna film the sanding. All I'm gonna do is put on some different size masking tape and kind of polish it out with a series of papers which I've got that run from 400 grit through to 12,000 in micro mesh, and I'll take those back with me there. Yeah, and that will be that. Ta-da. And what we've got to go with that is we have got, where did I put it? A couple of string trees, haven't we? And a nut to go with it. Which I've put somewhere and I will have to find. Okay, see you soon. Bye.